Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
So I was on YouTube and at Mr. Sharp's page, and he was answering an open tag event on what's your EDC or everyday carry knife, and I thought maybe I'll do that also because it's a question that you see asked quite often, especially on knife forums and stuff. What's your EDC? And surprisingly, on the knife forums you see the same people posting different knives every day, which kind of defeats the purpose of an everyday carry knife, because an everyday carry knife should be a knife that you carry every day. And yeah, you see a lot of knives here, but that's because these knives span about 42 years of carry. And so that's what I'm going to do with this open tag event. I'm going to give you what my EDCs have been ever since high school. And high school was some 40 odd years ago. So let's get started with the first knife, which is a knife I found on the street when I was I think a freshman in high school. It's just this little Italian stiletto, and I ended up carrying this knife all the way through high school. If you notice up here, the handle was broken. I found it broken, and I actually repaired it back in high school or so, and cutting a piece of wood and just gluing it in place, and with some epoxy, and then staining it and painting it and dyeing it and everything else to have it match the handle. And it's just your typical lockback 7-inch stiletto, so it's 4 inches closed with a 3-inch blade. See there, stainless Italy, nothing on the back side. Really good blade though, fairly sharp. Dates probably from the 60s or 70s. I don't know really, because I found it in 1971, 72, somewhere around there, and I carried it for about 4 years, all the way through high school. Yeah, carrying it to high school, like, you know, and that was my EDC all through high school. After high school, I went off to college, obviously, and was in Army ROTC, and ended up using a different knife. So what I picked up was this knife, which is well, not this exact knife. The exact knife is long gone somewhere in Germany right now. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I got myself a Camillus demo knife, or military knife, or utility knife, whatever you want to call it. It's the ones with the slab sides. This one here you'll see is Camillus 1981. The one I had before was Camillus 1970 something. I started college in 1975. But it's your typical utility knife. You got the main spear blade, the safety can opener. It's marked can opener, so you don't get confused. And then the long screwdriver cap lifter, nice bail there. And then the reamer on the back side here. And I carried this all through college, and right into the Army. And the reason I was carrying it in college is because we'd go out on field exercises once a quarter, so about 3 or 4 times a year we were out in the woods and playing camping and all that other stuff, and going canoeing and all sorts of crap. So this knife really came in handy, and I just started carrying it every day to school, because I was no longer carrying the little stiletto. And really nice knife, and I used like I said, not this specific one, but one like this all the way through college, and then right into going into the United States Army, where I was an infantry officer for about 3-4 years. And somewhere around 1982 in Germany, we were on a joint exercise with the 113th Panzer Regiment, Panzer Grenadier Regiment rather, which was our sister unit. And I traded my Camillus knife for a German Army knife with one of the other soldiers. And I really like this knife. Has the saw with the combo tool. At the time I did not know this combo tool also acted as a cap as a can opener. I thought it was just a cap lifter. And then you got your screwdriver tip. And if you see there's still wood in there because I still occasionally cut something with it. But it's not my EDC anymore. Then it's got a really long Spearmaster blade. You see this one is CCM Rost 3. Compare that blade to the Camillus blade and you see it's a little slimmer and a little longer. So it's a much better blade as far as I was concerned. And then also had the corkscrew and a reamer that was rear mounted, so you could do whatever you needed to do with reaming. And I've reamed quite a few things with this. Originally this had a grenade pin through here, but I replaced it, and man, am I upset that I don't have the grenade pin anymore. That was so cool. But you see the little German eagle there, German Army knife. And I carried this one for the rest of my time in the Army, and then a little time after I got out of the Army. And somewhere around 1982 or 83, I picked this one up at the Class 2 store while I was still in Germany. Interesting that it says 1981 on there because I did not pick it up in 81. I picked it up 82 or 83, so it was sitting around in the store there for a couple of years before I even picked it up. But still a really good knife. And after getting out of the Army, these two knives bounce back and forth in the pocket. Carry this one for a couple days or a month or whatever, and then carry this one for a couple days, months, or whatever, before settling on a new everyday carry knife a few years later. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but somewhere around 85, 86, 87, somewhere around there. My wife bought this one for me for Christmas. We didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, and I wanted a Swiss Army knife for Christmas, and my specifications to her was I wanted it to have a saw and a pair of scissors and no toothpick or tweezers. And she got exactly the knife I was looking for. I didn't even know what it was called at the time. I wasn't really up on Swiss Army knives at the time. But this was the Woodsman, which is very similar to the Huntsman. And as you can tell, it's been through quite a bit because I carried it a good 15 or 20 years. You also notice there it's an older corkscrew there with the fluting. And then nice little reamer there, no hole in it, so it doesn't have the sewing eye. Main blade here, and then the back side, and right there, that's where it laid against a piece of hot wire or something and melted, and I had to actually sand it down. You can't see here, but this blade tip was chipped here at the end, so it's been reprofiled a little bit because like I said, this knife was used for a good 15 or 20 years. Got the scissors that I was asking for. This actually had a double spring. I ended up bending it up once the spring broke, so the scissors still work. And this is the older ones with that screw that would always come loose, and so it still comes loose today, but still works pretty well. Let's close her up. And of course the saw. I definitely wanted the saw because of the saw that was on the German Army knife, and I really liked the saw in that, so I wanted another saw. And so this knife ended up being my everyday carry knife for a good 20 years. At least. Maybe a little longer. I'm not sure. At least 15. Maybe as much as 25. Hard to say. When I wasn't carrying this one is because I misplaced it, and then I would end up grabbing either the demo knife or the German Army knife until I could find this one again. And after several years of using it, and I really started collecting knives, I thought, man, I would really want to retire this one and find another Swiss Army knife to start carrying. And that will lead us to our next knife. So what I wanted still was a corkscrew on my Swiss Army knife, but I got tired of using this for a Phillips screwdriver, even though it works quite well as one. And so I wanted a Swiss Army knife with a rear-mounted, an end-mounted Phillips screwdriver. And so I settled on a Spartan light. I thought it was going to be really good because of the light here, you know, a little flashlight. But the problem with the flashlight, as you see here, the battery's dead. And the battery was always dying on me because this little switch kept getting moved around in my pocket. And so every time I needed to use the flashlight was dead. But the important thing is it had the end-mounted Phillips screwdriver, which I use all the time. So it was very helpful for me, and I really liked the knife and used it for quite some time. One of the other things, if you notice, it's got plus scales on it. These hunter green scales were not the original scales. It had translucent red scales that I really didn't like that much anyway. And I swapped them out and put on these hunter green scales with the plus scales because I wanted an ink pen with my knife. And this little pressurized ink pen is just a lovely thing. Plus you got the toothpick and the tweezers over here. Other blades, you got your, the pen blade and spear blade, and then the can opener, and now the flathead that stops at the half lock as well as all the way open, and a really nice cap lifter there. So really was very pleased with this knife and used it for some time, but what it was lacking was a pair of scissors. And so what I decided to do is pick up another little knife. So rather than swap out my Spartan light completely, I decided it's time to get a keychain knife. So I got this Midnight Manager, and at the time I was also working at a gas station as a second job, and I thought, well, that's perfect. Midnight Manager, working nights at a gas station, sounds perfect. And what I liked about it was it had a light that, it's only when you're pressing that button that it's on, which was great. Unfortunately, even though it looks white here, as you can tell back here, maybe you can, it's actually a red light, and it doesn't give out that much light. It would have worked better when I was in the Army under a poncho reading a map, actually. But tool-wise, you've got your pen blade, and this combo tool that has a little screwdriver here, again, a Phillips. The cap lifter doesn't work nearly as well as I wish it did, but it's there. And then, most importantly, the scissors, which were lacking on my Spartan light. So now I've got scissors again, which I was really happy with. And also something that I wish I had instead of that pen blade, which is this little file with the little screwdriver tip. And I love this file and use it quite often. And so I was really happy with that. And also on top of that, because it's the Midnight Manager, it had an ink pen. So that was really cool. And I was really happy. So for some time, these were the two knives I was carrying. The Spartan Light and a Midnight Manager. And then I started thinking about it for a while and realized, you know what, I'm always talking about how great toothpicks are. I love the 5-inch toothpick. And I think, well, if I like them so much, why am I not carrying one? And I thought, well, if I keep talking about them, I should at least start carrying one. So I grabbed my Rough Rider saw cut bone 5-inch toothpick and threw it in my pocket and started carrying it along with my Spartan Light and my Midnight Manager. The Midnight Manager was on my keys in the left pocket, and these two were in my right pocket. And really liked it. Started using it quite a bit too, as you can probably tell from this blade as I open it. You can see the little marks on there. That's from whittling, cutting bark off of trees, cutting up carpeting, cutting up steak, peeling lots of apples, spreading peanut butter, cutting thousands of boxes. You name it, this knife has been used for it probably. And all I've had to do is touch it up once in a while with on a stone or on the rim of a coffee cup, and it's back to sharp. And so really a great knife, and tight as the day I started using it. The blade has no wobble at all, and as you can tell, it's really thin and still got a great snap to it, and it just really disappeared in my pocket. Really liked it and used it just as much as I was using my Spartan Light, because sometimes a 2.5 inch blade doesn't do what a 4-inch blade will do. So that's why I started carrying it, and I was carrying 3 knives for some time. And like I said, this one just disappeared in the pocket, and really did, because one day it went through the washer and dryer because I forgot that it was in my pocket. And that's why, if you notice this shield, it's a little crooked. It's because going through the washer and dryer loosened it up, popped it off, and I basically had to epoxy it back on, and so it's a little crooked now. So that is not the fault of Rough Rider's quality control, it's the fault of my quality control. I just did not glue the thing back on straight. But the knife was just terrific, and I used it for a good 2-3 years probably. And then I started thinking I should probably stop carrying that and see just how good a USA made knife is, because, you know, this is made in China. Everyone always says you should carry USAA, so I decided I'm going to grab a USA made toothpick and start carrying it instead. So my Rough Rider toothpick went to the side, and I grabbed a Baron Son 5-inch toothpick. And the first thing I noticed right away was this knife weighs a whole lot more than this knife. And it's just a little bit thicker, but the rosewood scales were just heavier. And if you notice, it's got a slightly thicker back spring too. So it's just a heavier knife overall, but it does look nice. And the important thing with it was Baron Son USA. Nothing on that side, just Baron Son USA on this side. And so I started carrying it. It's also 440A stainless, and the blade is I think 3 7/8 inches instead of 4, but still a good blade. But the problem with it was I just could not keep this blade sharp, and no matter what I did, it was always getting dull and not like the Rough Rider. And so after carrying it for about 6 months, I said, yeah, I can't deal with this anymore. I want a knife that's going to stay sharp for me. And so even though, you know, I'm supposed to be carrying a USA made toothpick, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up going back to the Rough Rider toothpick. Problem is, by the time I went back to it, I couldn't find out where this knife went to. Looked low and high and just could not find it. So I continued to carry this one for a little longer, until I went to Smoky Mountain Knife Works and picked up another Rough Rider toothpick. And so I went to to Smoky Mountain Knife Works, and picked up a new saw cut bone Rough Rider. And I knew as soon as I was picking it up, as soon as I got home, I would find the new toothpick or the old toothpick, and that's exactly what happened. But I figured as long as I bought it, I should start using this one. And so I have been using it now for, I don't know, maybe about 8-9 months, and it's doing really good. And I have sharpened it, but you can't really tell, and it's still nice and tight. No complaints with it, and as you can tell from the snap, it's really good and strong. So that's the toothpicks I've been carrying. First, an old Rough Rider. I might go back to it. It's just as good as it ever was. The Baron Son, which unfortunately disappointed me a little bit. And then another Rough Rider toothpick. At the same time, about a year or so ago, I got tired of the light not working on my Spartan light, and I also wanted some scissors on it. So I thought I'll go ahead and go from a 3-layer Swiss Army knife to a 4-layer Swiss Army knife and grab the Explorer. And I've been really happy with it ever since I made that decision. So let's talk a little bit about the Explorer. So now my Explorer here originally came with red scales. I swapped those out with some black scales so that I could once again go with plus scales, get myself the ink pen I always wanted. Come on, right there. And then you got the toothpick on this side and the tweezers on this side. And once again, I added a small screwdriver for the eyeglasses here. And you can see here it's got the sewing eye with it, so it's a little bit newer. And the half stop on the screwdriver. The important changes with it are instead of the light that always failed me, I've got a magnifying glass now, which is an 8-power magnifying glass, and that comes in real handy because I'm always looking for tang stamps and everything, and that comes in real handy. And you can see that it works quite well. You know, that 8-power really helps to show up the tang stamps on knives. And I still got my end-mounted Phillips, which is something I'm always using too. So I'm really happy with the Explorer because the one thing I really wanted with it is a good pair of scissors, and I definitely got that with these because this one is the newer screw, even though it's still a screw there, that doesn't come undone all the time. So really happy with my Explorer that I'm carrying now. And about at the same time that I was switching over to the Explorer, I also decided that my Midnight Manager, as good as it was just a little too heavy on my keychain. So I decided I was going to swap it out because I realized I really didn't need the light so much. So I switched over to just the signature. So I still have my pin here on it, and otherwise it's just the regular tools that you find on a Classic, which I still love the file and everything. And I've got a second pair of scissors now too. And the signature usually comes with a pair of tweezers, but I swapped that out for a toothpick because I'm actually using the toothpick more than I do the tweezers. Plus, I got a pair of tweezers here, so I didn't need 2 pair of tweezers, but I do need toothpicks. So today, my everyday carries are this Victorinox Explorer, the little signature, and finally a Rough Rider toothpick. And if you were to ask me a year from now what my everyday carry would be, it'll probably still be a Rough Rider toothpick, a Victorinox Explorer, and the signature. I guess I'm a creature of habit. If I need a different knife, I'll throw it in the pocket along with those 3. I'm not going to get rid of those simply because I want to carry some other knife. Those 3 knives go with me everywhere.
As always, thanks for dropping by, and remember, you're only as sharp as your knife.